Welcome to the Renaissance and Reformation Timeline of events. Whenever we are going to study a new unit, it's important to get an idea of where this unit is in time. This is why we create a timeline in our journals of the pivotal events of the unit. Right now, I want you to turn to the timeline page of your journal and go ahead and on that timeline, put these dates that you see down here, right here at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and insert those dates in the timeline and push pause while you finish that. Then when you've put that in there, go ahead and hit continue. The first event on our timeline is in 1350, and this is the date that historians have fixed for the beginning of the Renaissance in Italy. As we learned in our reading, the Renaissance began in Italy due to a peculiar set of circumstances in Italy's location and the way the nations and the duchies were politically formed there. They were more free of the power of the church than any other because they were small and independent. And so this kind of new thought was able to take place in Italy. So go ahead and record that in 1350 the Renaissance begins in Italy. Again, each time you can pause as you're recording until you're ready to move on to the next. In 1450, Johann Gutenberg made a truly revolutionary invention. This was the invention of the printing press with movable type that could print numerous copies of books very quickly. As a result of this, many books were printed, and the ability to learn from books became far more widespread than it ever had been. Previous to this invention, books had been created by people writing them by hand, and it was a very slow process, very expensive and very laborious. But through the development of the printing press and a better quality of paper, many books were able to be printed and books became more widespread and available to the general population. As a result, the level of literacy in the society went up as more and more people learned to read and write. In 1505, Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. Leonardo da Vinci is one of the outstanding figures of the Renaissance. He was an amazing author, painter, artist, inventor, and thinker whose ideas went far beyond his time. In 1508, Michelangelo, the great artist, paints the Sistine Chapel. This is a beginning of a tremendous burst of art that was supported by churches as they attempted to bring the images of the church out of the Dark Ages, and this was celebrated in many of the paintings that decorate to this day many of the churches and cathedrals in Europe. In 1513, Niccolo Machiavelli writes The Prince. The Prince is a practical guide to political power during the Renaissance. Machiavelli was a government worker who was trying to find favor with a particular leader, and so he wrote this book that outlined how a prince should exercise power over his people and how you would get power and retain power. And by today's standards, it seems pretty, well, it's not what we consider ethical, but at the time, this was a huge change and led to the beginnings of changes in how people governed. In 1516, Sir Thomas More in England publishes a book called Utopia, and we use that modern word today, utopia, to talk about a perfect society. Again, this was a revolutionary idea, and the fact that he published it and it became widespread and spread a new philosophy of mankind and their relationship with God and with one another was revolutionary for its time and led to a great deal of thinking in the church. In 1517, the Reformation begins. The Reformation was an effort to change the corrupt practices of the Catholic Church. And a monk by the name of Martin Luther wrote down what he called his 95 Theses and nailed them to the door of the Cathedral at Worms. This was the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, although it originally began as an effort to reform the corrupt practices of the Catholic Church. Luther was not trying to create a new religion. He was trying to fix the problems within the Roman Catholic Church. In 1519, a fiery reformer in Switzerland named Zwingli begins preaching reform in Zurich. And so this idea of reformation, or changing the Catholic Church, begins spreading all over Europe. In 1534, the efforts of the Reformation come to a head when Henry VIII breaks away from the Catholic Church and establishes the Church of England. Henry VIII wanted a divorce from his first wife. The Pope would not give him one due to political problems that the Pope had, being caught between two very powerful countries, and Henry VIII simply breaks with the Church and makes himself the head of the new Church of England. In 1534, the Roman Catholic Church was also trying to combat this Reformation process, and a man named Ignatius of Loyola founds the Society of Jesus as the arm of spreading the Catholic doctrine and revitalizing the Catholic Church. Today they're known as the Jesuits, and they are still in force. They run some of the finest universities in the world. In 1536, John Calvin, another very fiery reformer, published his Institutes of the Christian Religion. Calvin profoundly changed Christianity with his views on predestination and launched a whole new series of religions, all within the realm of Christianity, but as separate from the Catholic Church. Science was also taking off during the Renaissance. Many new scientific ideas were being formulated, and many old ideas were being questioned. In 1543, a fellow named Nicholas Copernicus published his volume on scientific ideas that began changing the way people thought about the world and the universe and our place in it. In 1545, the Catholic Church convenes the Council of Trent, which is an effort to answer the charges of the Protestant Revolution. The Catholic Church realizes it has to tighten its strings, it has to get control of its people again, and it needs to fix some of the corrupt practices, such as the sale of indulgences, that had been occurring. And so they meet in Trent to deal with these issues. In 1558, Elizabeth I is crowned Queen of England. She becomes the predominant Protestant monarch in all of Europe. And although she spends most of her time at war with most of the Catholic countries, she manages to keep England mostly at peace, and using her very skillful diplomacy, is able to balance the power and keep her country from being invaded. In 1564, the preeminent English author William Shakespeare is born. Shakespeare writes over 37 plays, he writes numerous poems, and he profoundly changes the shape of the English language. He invents a lot of words that we take for granted today, such as eyeball and assassination, and another number of words that he simply invents by putting words together that already exist to create a word that he needs. Shakespeare is a very English playwright and author, and pretty much sets the style for English writing at that point. In 1605, a fellow named Cervantes in Spain published Don Quixote, which was a whole new art form in literature in Spain and became one of the most widely read books in the world. In 1609, Galileo improves the telescope and is able to see heavenly bodies close up, and This begins a whole revolution about the place of the Earth in the universe. Previously, it had been thought that everything in the universe revolved around the Earth. But through these observations that he's able to make, he sees other planets, he sees the way we revolve around the sun, and he makes the sun the center of the universe, which gets him into a lot of trouble with the Catholic Church and the prevailing scientific thought. Okay, these items are the high points of the Renaissance, and these are the things you'll need to put on your timeline. As you need, you can go back and check, review. You can always pause and continue and get these things in your journal so that you will have them for future reference.